So in our last video, James went through the specifics of how he achieved financial freedom and retired aged 34. Now he's going to go into the top 5 mistakes that people make on their journey to trying to achieve financial freedom and retire early. But first, he's going to tell us about his overall framework for how best to understand this.
Thank you. So what an introduction. So this all came about because, I like we talked about in the last video, I grew up really poor, single mother. It was a real stress growing up, especially around money. And so, because I was on this mission to solve the money game, to become financially free. And once I got there, I started to look around me and realized the vast majority of people weren't there, and certainly weren't even on the path to getting there. But then it just didn't make sense to me because most people were starting from a much better position than me. So that got me thinking, why? Why is this happening? And so I started to dig and research and get under the skin as to why most people weren't doing this and getting there. And so what I was starting to see was telltale signs and patterns coming up over and over again. And this is where the title of my coaching business comes from, which is the money paradox. Essentially, which is why it is so simple to become financially free, and yet so few do. That paradox within money, that it is simple to solve the game of money, and yet most people don't. And it really comes down to 5 key obstacles that are getting in the way of people reaching it. And let's get into those now, I guess.
Cool. Okay. So tell us, what is the first number 1 mistake that people make?
So within our culture, money is a taboo. People don't talk about it. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of uncomfortableness. There's a lot of these limiting beliefs or negative associations around money. And so this causes some major, major problems. The first thing is people do not spend time and attention on it. We move away from pain and towards pleasure. So if the topic of money is painful, we do not spend time on it. We go do something else. And obviously, if we're not spending time in an area, we're not going to do well in it. We ignore it. We push it away. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have all these like messy, unhealthy, negative, like associations around money. Like money is evil, or for example, we have like this feeling that if we make money, that we're somehow taking money from someone else, and that's bad. And so what kind of happens is we're like, oh, I shouldn't get money because then like maybe I'm making someone else poor, or like if I celebrate money, if I say, hey, I'm doing really well financially, then I'm going to make someone else feel inferior, and then I'm going to sound like I'm arrogant, or that that I'm doing better than someone else, right? Or if we talk about money and then someone says they're doing better than us, then we're going to feel inferior. Then we're going to feel bad and uncomfortable about our situation. Think about it. How many times have you felt uncomfortable around the subject of money? For most people, it is such a regular occurrence. And so what do? We just shut off from it. We just don't think about it. We don't talk about it. Again, another reason is that because we don't talk about it, especially numbers, right? How much is your friend earning? How much money do they have in the bank in savings? What are they invested in? How has that progressed in their life? What have they done well in? What learnings have they made? How have they succeeded? What are their strengths around money? What could you learn from your friends? What mistakes did your friends make that you could learn from to avoid those mistakes? What mistakes did you make that you could tell your friends about to help them? You start to get into this type of conversation. Very, very quickly do you start to do better in the subject, just like anything else. So let me ask you this, Jesse. Give me an example of something that you're really good at. And not just really, really good at, you've achieved like proper good success in.
I would say marketing right now. That's my career path.
Great, marketing. How many hours have you spent on the subject of marketing?
Gotcha. I guess it would be, more or less 9 to 5 for about 9 years.
Exactly. So if you ask this question to anyone, the answer is going to be the same. The things they're really good at and they've achieved success in, they've spent time on, not just a decent amount of time, but consistently over their life. Money is no different. If you want to be financially free, you've got to spend time and energy focusing on it. There's that famous quote, which is, where focus goes, energy flows. So if you want to put energy into the subject of money and do better in this area and become financially free, you've got to put your focus on it.
Cool. Okay, and what would you say is the number 2 obstacle or mistake?
A lack of education. So the reason I ended up going into coaching the space, creating online content, talking about it at workshops, running workshops, coming on interviews like this, is because when I was on this journey and wanted to solve the money game, it was really hard to find reliable, good quality education in a space that actually worked. Most of the stuff out there was rubbish. So first of all, if you think about financial advice, most financial advice comes from financial advisors. And again, there's some amazing ones out there, but most of them then make money through the commissions on what they're selling the person they're advising, which gives a bit of a conflict of interest, right? The second issue is that with financial advisors, the vast majority of people using that service are people who are high net worth individuals. And that's because for it to be worth the financial advisor's time, you need to have a lot of money so that what you're willing to pay them is enough for them to make a good living. The trouble is, most people aren't high net worth individuals, and so then don't get access to that type of advice. Then you've got a whole load of content out there. You've got books, you've got videos, YouTube videos and stuff, and there's some really amazing stuff. But there's also a lot of stuff out there that's not helpful and that is outdated. A lot of the stuff that is unhelpful is because for something to do really well and go viral and be catchy and engage you, it's really the entertainment factor. It's how good they are at marketing, how good they are at presenting that information, not necessarily as to how good they are in terms of what the content is. So the question you've always got to ask yourself when you're consuming content in something like this is, have they got a proven, consistent track record of doing it themselves? Because if they haven't, personally, I would want to focus on someone who's actually proved that they've done it themselves. Not just themselves, but they've also proven that they've been able to help other people in a consistent way. Because without that, how do you know it's true? Right? Because you can go learn books, but it's like me. I could go and read a book about plumbing. Am I a plumber? No. Right? Do I know the theory of it? Yes, but that's very different. And then the last thing is a lot of the content out there is this kind of same old troped out advice. Like, you've got to invest in the stock market and bonds, for example, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, which is this kind of thing that's been talked about for decades. The reality is that is just an outdated model, right? Could you invest in that? Is your money going to blow up? No. Are you going to be able to retire early from that? I highly doubt it. Not unless you're making an insane amount of money. But then that's because you're making an insane amount of money, not because of your investment strategy. So what's really important is to understand what is relevant in this time, right? We are coming at the end of what we call a long-term debt cycle. So for those that don't understand, don't worry. It's just that you have these short-term business cycles, 5 to 7 years. You have these really long ones. And as we come towards the end of something like this, things become very different. We have these really high inflation. It becomes much more volatile. The economies within countries and globally are much more unstable. We have to print way more money to make a meaningful effect on the economy. And this creates a very different environment from 10, 20 years ago. We had a period where interest rates went down and down and down and down over a very long period of time. And so in that environment, you could hold bonds and make a fortune. We're not there anymore. Interest rates are low, they're going up. Bonds don't work as well. So that's just an example of where something that was talked about for a very, very long time isn't as relevant today. And then the other thing is, when people think about the subject of money, you tend to focus on investing because that's the sexy thing. That's the exciting thing. Where do I put my money? How do I make loads of money? How do I get rich quick, right? But the reality is, to become financially free is so much more. To become financially free, you need to be able to earn good money, be in control of your spending so you're able to save most of it, and then follow that through into investment consistently and make a good return. Keep doing that till you become financially free. So there's 3 pillars. There's earning, there's saving, and there's investing. If you just focus on 1 or 2 of those, you're not going to get there. You've got to do all 3. So if you go to someone and just focus on investing, that's not going to help. Or if you just focus on making as much money as possible, that isn't going to work. Or if you just get really tight and just stop spending any spare pound and all you do is just save all your money and put it under the mattress, that isn't going to get you there. You need to understand the bigger picture, and most importantly, understand which area is going to give you the best benefit. So it's about bringing that whole picture together. And then the last thing I'll say is around lack of education within, the usual route that people move through life. You think about school, primary, secondary school. Okay, we learn history, geography, maths, biology, but do you learn how to do your accounts, how to take out a mortgage, how to take out debt responsibly? Where do you put your money into investments? Like, how do you make sure you earn good money in a career? These things are so, so important. But by the time you realize this is important, right, and you start to look for it, you're quite late on in life, and you're having to learn these things quite later on. And by then, you've already made a few mistakes. Some people are already in a bit of debt, and then it's a lot harder to play catch up. So I'm a big advocate around getting good quality education to people at a much, much younger age. So, if you're a parent, you've got kids, maybe think about, imparting some of these good fundamentals to them, right? So that when they get later in life, they're already starting with that kind of philosophy in their mind.
Cool. I like that. Super strong. So what is mistake number 3?
Most people, when it comes to making a lot of money, they're like dreamers, right? So, if you got 100 people in the room right now and we ask them all, do you want to become a millionaire? Every single one of them pretty much is going to say yes, right? Why? Because obviously that helps their situation. They're better off. But if you kind of got under the skin of it and asked them all, like, what are you doing to get there? Most people would struggle to answer that. And that's because they aren't. And so just because you want to be a millionaire or you want to be financially free does not mean you're going to get that. So a dream is just a fantasy. To become financially free, you need to take that as a kind of a goal or objective and say, okay, this is something I want. I want to be financially free. I want to retire early. I want to solve this money game. Let me go and find out, how do I do it? I'm here. I'm at A. I want to be at B. What's the path I need to take? What's the fundamentals? What's the strategy? What are the tactics I need to apply? And then how do I make that relevant to myself? How do I start doing that each day, each week, each month? So I make sure I follow along this path all the way to the end where I'm financially free. That is how you become financially free, by setting it as an objective, learning how to do it, and then applying it. If we just dream of it and we like the idea of it, it just will not happen.
What is mistake number 4?
Not tracking your progress, right? So even if you set it as a target to be financially free, you're taking steps, If you're not tracking it, you're not making sure you're making progress. So you can't iterate and improve, right? So one of the best things to do, and this is one of the first things I do with all my coaching clients, is I make sure they're tracking their progress each month at least. And at the beginning, even once a week, just to get into the habit of it. So the main three things, right? Earn, save, invest. So how much are you earning? Make sure you understand that. You understand how much you've been making, and then track that going up, right? So if you keep seeing it staying the same, you're like, okay, I need to be doing something different. I need to be doing something different to make sure it goes up, make sure it goes up. The second thing, how much you're saving, right? So most people underestimate how much they're spending, right? Pretty much every client I ask, how much do you think you're spending? Okay. Then we actually go into the details. It's way, way higher. And it doesn't need to be complicated, right? You can just simply work out, okay, well, how much money do I make after tax? All right. My savings was, I don't know, £1,000 last month. Now it's at £1,200. Well, that means I've saved £200. So take the amount you've made that month, you subtract what you've saved, that's how much you've spent, right? So by tracking it, you can understand how much you're spending, and then from there you can start to think about improving it, right? But without tracking it, you can't know that, right? And that's what allowed me to start to save money consistently. And then as I was doing that, I could say, okay, well, now that I can see that, oh, what if I do this? What if I do that? Then I can improve how much I save over time, either by earning more money or reducing how much I'm spending. And at the very least, make sure I'm maintaining how much I'm spending so I can consistently make those savings. So many times people save, they save a bit of money and then they stop. Save a bit of money and then they spend it because people feel comfortable, right? Like, oh, I've got a bit of money in the bank. Now I feel comfortable. Okay, now I can spend more. Then the savings go down. Oh, now I feel uncomfortable again. Now I've got to save more. And the problem is they're just staying like within a band. To be able to consistently push through, you've got to be able to track it and track it going higher and higher and higher. So really important, at the very minimum, track how much you're spending and therefore saving. Track how your wealth is improving over time, right? Everybody talks about income, making more money, being rich. That's all about income. So to be financially free, it's all about wealth, right? It's about what you're not spending rather than how much you're making and what you're spending, right? And then lastly, investments. How are your investments doing? What's the return doing? Just be tracking it. And you don't need to make it complex. Don't start spending loads of time, fancy formulas and spreadsheets, all right? Just keep it simple. How much are you saving each month? It's really simple. At the very minimum, all you need to do is track how much you're saving each month, how much is your wealth going up each month, and then how well are your investments doing? What's your return doing on those? And just by simply paying attention to it, spending time looking at it, you will naturally do better each month and each year. You don't even need to set goals because you just doing that, spending time thinking about it, will naturally make you want to do better at it.
Cool. Love that. Now take us home. Mistake number 5.
The last mistake people make is giving up too early. Now, within this world, people talk about compounding all the time and it being this secret magic trick to become financially free. And that is true. It is extremely powerful. Most people don't even understand what this thing is, right? Or know of it. But even if they do, most people within those people don't actually understand it. And it simply just means that when you make money on money, it exponentially grows. It scales up like this, right? So if you're making 10% on your investments, right? Okay. But let's say your investments is £100. Okay. Well, 10% of £100 is £10. Who cares? That's not going to change your life, right? So when someone starts doing that, okay, I'm going to learn what to do. I'm going to start putting money into investments. You know, I get a good return, 10%. £10. What's the point? People lose interest, right? But they're not getting the bigger picture, because once you get to say £1 million, 10% of £1 million is £100,000. For most people, that is way more than they need to retire and be financially free, right? And so it's about taking the fundamentals of becoming financially free and following it through to the point you become financially free and retire early. Because at first it's going to look rubbish. If you think about the curve, right? At the beginning, it's like not doing anything. And I felt this. I remember learning this and kind of getting it. But then when I started to see it happen, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Because at the beginning, like, not much was happening for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, I was making tens of thousands of pounds per month. And then like £50,000, £100,000 in really short periods of time. Same with properties. At first, I'd buy one property, then a few years later, I'd buy another property. Now I'm buying properties constantly. I'm constantly buying multiple properties, because as the amount of money you have grows, the amount it goes up by goes up even quicker and quicker, and the amount of money you're talking about just feels like totally crazy, even though it's often the same percentage. All right. So you've got to kind of get through this early frustrating bit where it feels like nothing is happening to get to the really exciting bit. And remember, that curve is the same for everyone. Everyone has to go through that. So you've got to push through the boring bit to get to the really exciting bit.
Gotcha. Love that. That's also a super strong life lesson, which could apply to so many different areas. So now, thinking about these 5 mistakes and your own life, what are the key mistakes that you have personally made on your trajectory?
So the top 5 mistakes I'd say I made, if I were to go back and do it all again, the first one is that I wouldn't have gone to university. I mean, I had a good time and I was there for 4 years and made loads of friends and learned some really interesting stuff. But really, like, did I really get value for money? No. And then secondly, going and starting in the corporate world, I didn't enjoy it. It was boring. It was stressful. It's a lot of politics. I didn't make that much money. If I was to start it all again, I would have just joined someone that was inspirational, was a role model, and that was doing something similar to what I cared about, learned under them, learned the fundamental skills to becoming successful. And through that, starting to develop and understand what I cared about, what I was good at, what I was passionate about. And then under them, really learn from them, give them as much value as possible. And through that, got them to teach me, like, how did you do it? Teach me, right? And then through that, I think I would have gotten here much, much faster. The third one's not necessarily a mistake, but I think it's just important to bear in mind. Like, I took 3 years out before I actually got going and started my career. I traveled a lot when I was younger, and part of me doesn't regret that, because I feel I'm a much more, I don't know, interesting person, and I feel like I understand the world in a much better way. And I had a lot of fun, right? Would I have done as much as I did? Maybe not. I probably would have maybe gone a bit sooner. I remember getting to a point where I thought, this is getting a little bit addictive, and I probably need to, like, settle down and actually crack on and make something of my life. The fourth one is I would have definitely got an assistant earlier. I mean, it's just a total no-brainer. When you start to make a pretty decent amount of money, having someone to do all of the things that you don't enjoy and that is low value input for you frees up so much of my time to then be able to go and then make more money and do more enjoyable things and more interesting things, right?
On that, what would you say is the entry point for getting a virtual assistant, for instance? Like, what is the kind of minimum amount that you could spend to get a decent amount of value, in your view?
A great way to think about it is just think of a rough, how much is your time worth? How much are you making per hour? And so if you can pay someone else less money, less than that, to do something you don't enjoy or isn't like the things that is really making you the money, then that allows you to free up your time to have more energy, more enthusiasm, to make more money. And then you can make more money, and then that will actually ultimately make you more successful. So I guess it's like not thinking so scarce. People think, oh no, I don't want to pay money because then I'll lose money. But if you think from an abundance mindset and trust that you can make more money by freeing up your time, and there's this really famous book that I highly recommend called Buy Back Your Time. It's instead of thinking, oh, I'm having to spend money, think, how can I buy my time back? How can I spend money or invest in getting more time so that I can do more with my life?
Gotcha. And if I really pushed, what would be the benchmark for what they say? Like, are we talking £200 a month on virtual assistants, or would it have to be like £1,000?
It's not about a certain amount of money. It's about just thinking, how much are you earning? Like, what's your earning potential, right? So, but just to think practically, right? Like, I have an assistant from the Philippines, right? They're exceptionally good. My assistant's amazing, and they're very affordable. The going rate for a full-time virtual assistant in the Philippines is $850. And so, you don't have to start with full-time. It
A
could be
month.
part-time. Exactly. It could be part-time. You could just have them one day a week, right? So that's an absolute no-brainer. But then even in the here and now, if you don't enjoy cleaning, don't clean. Have someone clean your house, and then you can spend that time, doing a side project, a side hustle, building up something else, right? Learning property, making sure you're taking your investments more seriously. So I think as a starting, rather than saying spend $200 on this, I think it's just start down the path of paying someone else to take things off your plate that you don't enjoy doing, and that isn't giving you a good return on your time investment, so that you have more free time to then increase your earning potential and have more enjoyment in life.
Gotcha. Okay, great. That's a great end to this episode. Next episode, James is going to be going into property very specifically, and why he found it the best vehicle for achieving financial freedom.